Welcome back, and I'm so excited to be on to design number 2 in the series of Back to Basics floral design. If you haven't been here before and you haven't watched one of my videos, my name is Sharon Dower and I'm a floristry teacher and I'm a lover of all things floral. If you've been before, welcome back to design number 2. And this week we're going to be doing an L shape or an asymmetrical design, and it leads on very well from last week's line arrangement. And what I'm going to do to try and make it a little bit easier for you to progress with the designs, I'm going to use the same flower colour combination as we did for the line arrangement. I think it helps for you to compare and contrast the two designs, and if you learn that basic line to start with, that basic structure, then you can follow on quite nicely into design number 2, the line or the asymmetric. So first of all, this week we're going with a flat container, so we don't have to consider the height of our container when deciding the overall height of our flower arrangement. So it makes it a little bit easier when you're beginning. You can go as tall as you want for this design. So as tall as your flower material will allow you to. And I've got this just ordinary plastic tray. This is a container that lots of flower arrangers and florists use. You can reuse it time and time again, and it's a really good versatile little plastic tray to have in your store cupboard that you can bring out time and time again. And this week I've got half a block of floral foam, and that's been pre-soaked in fresh clean water with some floral food added to it. It's been allowed to sink under its own weight so that it absorbs water correctly. And another little accessory that you might want to have in your toolbox is this Oasis tape or floral tape, pot tape, has lots of different names. It's like a sticky green tape, and that will help to hold your floral foam into place. So we've used that. Start with it stuck to the plastic tray. If you try and stick it to the floral tape, to the Oasis, which is wet, the tape won't stick. So always attach it to a dry part of the container. I'm going to take it all the way around and finish at the top. Now I always finish at the top because if your design is moving around, for example on a delivery vehicle, or whether it's being moved around the house, often the tape, if you don't finish the tape at the top and you have loose ends underneath, they unravel and then your floral foam becomes a little bit less secure. And I'm just going to go once over the top, but you can of course go lengthways if you're doing a bigger design and you want it to be a little bit more secure. But for now, that's nice and firmly attached to my plastic tray. Also gives me room to add some water because we have a little bit of depth in that floral container there. So I'll follow the same basic sort of rules as we did last time, and I'm going to start with the flowers first. We will, when we progress more into more complicated designs, I will start and give you a variation and put some foliage in first to create the outline. But following on from last week's design, we're going to start with our flowers first. And I'm going to reuse that lovely clove carnation that we had last time. It's a wonderful colour at this time of year. We're in September, we're headed into the autumn, and it is really very true to its season. And this is the tallest one I've got, so that is going to really gauge my height. And the design that we're doing is going to come off here to the side to create an asymmetrical design, which means unbalanced, and it's another design that you only see from the front. So similar to last week, a front facing design, but rather than have an equal balance on either side, we are going to come off to what is my right hand side. Now if you're right-handed like me, you will probably find your L shape easier to create coming to your more dominant hand, so to your right. For those left-handed ladies and gents, you will possibly find it easier to go to the left. And this design, when it's completed, looks wonderful on either side of an altar or maybe on a mantelpiece where you have two opposite L-shaped designs facing in towards one another. So we've gauged my height, and then I'm going to work my longer side. So for this design, we have one side that is longer than the other, which gives us that asymmetrical or unbalanced look. So we've gauged the height. Now my side can be two different lengths. You can make your triangle equal and come out the same length, or for me, I find it more pleasing where it's half the distance of the height. So I'm going to roughly gauge where I think half of that height is going to be. So that should be a good height. So we're roughly half the height of my overall flower design. And I'm going to bring that out from the side of the floral foam and angled slightly forward. Now you can go a little bit more severe with it and have a more pronounced L shape, but I like to angle it slightly forward. It makes a more natural shape, I think, if we bring it slightly forward. So we've got the full height, and then half of the distance gives us our width, and then our opposite side, to make it unbalanced, is half of the distance of this side here. So we have a shorter side on what is my left as I'm working. And that is going to be that sort of rough gauge. And again, we don't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be measured with a ruler. Just learn to do it quite pleasingly with the eye. And that's our first 3 flower placements in. If you have a choice, they would be the smaller size of the heads, and with the larger flower heads more towards the centre. And we've got a great shape starting to form. Now we're going to bring one towards the front, and your front section is going to be a little bit shorter than your side. And if you look, I'm down very low on the container and flat almost on the table. So this flower here gives us our profile, and if we turn it from the side, just like last week where we had the staggered line down through the centre, this front flower brings the design out and gives us a beautiful profile shape, but I'm still very much flat on the table, almost sitting on top of that plastic tray. And this front piece is a little bit shorter than my side. So far just that 4 basic flowers in there creates that lovely outline shape that we need. Now, like last week, we're going to go with creating that focal line down through the middle. Now this week I'm going to go with 5 flowers, just so that you get to see a little bit of a variation in the style. So this flower is our centre flower, allowing space for one more here and one more at the height. And if we look at it from the side, you can see that lovely elevated profile coming towards the front. So the design isn't flat when we look at it from the side. That creates that lovely 3-dimensional look that we're trying to achieve. So I'm now looking to place my flower in this gap here, and we can use that little tip again to turn your flower upside down. Remember with the carnations not to cut it in these sections here, because the internode here doesn't take up any water. remembering how that bouncy ball comes down the stairs, we're aiming to have our flowers coming in a staggered line there down towards the front. So without these two flowers on the side, we've almost got that line arrangement that we started to learn last week. And each design, when we're learning, so these very basic designs that I'm talking you through, are all an extension of that line arrangement that we learnt. So if we had a choice, this flower here is our focal flower, so it is the larger of the head, smaller, getting bigger as we come down towards the focal area, and then smaller as we go away. And remember that we have that triangle sort of shape forming from the side. What we don't want to do is push this little flower in too short so that the design comes back on itself towards the bottom. We need to carry that lovely sloped effect down towards the front. And now you should be able to see a great focal line and materials to either side to help start that asymmetrical design, that very unbalanced shape. Now hopefully we've got a couple more carnations here to go out to the side, and we're going to bring one on the base so we have that front shape forming just to the side, and we've got 10 carnations in total. We have the focal line, 3 there out to the side, 1 to give me my shorter length, and then this final one is just going to come quite short, down and under on my shorter side, so that we have a little bit of strength added to that focal flower there. And that's pretty much your overall shape done. That is your asymmetric design. Now that could be done with mixed flowers, it could be done with a mix of colours, but when you're starting, it's always much easier to choose one flower type and one colour. You don't have to worry about how the colours mix together or how the colour balance is going to work. You make life much easier for yourself at the very beginning. So we gauged the height, then we did our sides, and then we filled in the focal line down throughout the middle. And now what we can do is add in some lovely textural foliages. And some interesting shapes and colours. Now this week I've gone for some foliage that you would possibly find in the garden if you're a keen gardener. Last week we looked at more florist type foliages. Now this one you might be familiar with. This is Weigela, and in the summer months it has this lovely almost bell-shaped flower on it. This is a shrub that I have grown in my garden, but we're using it for the foliage today. We're not going to use it for that flower on the top. And then to contrast that, to give me a different shape and a different colour, I have some wonderful rosemary. Nice straight pieces there of rosemary. And to strengthen my focal point, I have these Bergenia leaves, sometimes known as elephant's ears. Another one that possibly could grow in the garden, quite an easy one to grow. And I should have 3 of those. We just drop one on the floor. So we have three of those lovely Bergenia leaves, and you can see that they're beginning to turn and have those lovely autumn rusty sort of colours to them. I also got, now again it's a garden foliage, this is called Heuchera, and I've got 3 of those as well, and I thought the colour link with these was quite attractive. It's a lovely, again, dark burgundy red, picks up really nicely on the colour of those lovely carnations. So that's 2 of the focal flowers. Let's just move that out of the way. And then have some little berries, some addition of some little Rosehips that I found growing in a friend's garden they've come from. But again, a lovely autumn colour and a great colour link with the autumn sort of shades that I've chosen this week. So a little bit of an extra addition there with the little berries. Now on this side, I have some Griselinia, so another garden foliage, and this is a much more limey, more zesty colour. So that's spare just in case I run out of foliage. And also just this ordinary privet that lots of us use for hedging in the garden. It's a lovely flat leaf, helps to create a really good outline shape. And lots of you can probably get hold of privet quite well. It's, I think, a little bit of an undervalued foliage in flower arranging. We just sort of cut it back and use it as hedging, and it really is quite useful in flower arranging. So I'm going to start now at the back. It doesn't matter if we extend the height a little bit. So by adding in the Weigela foliage at the back, it tends to extend the design, and a round shape like the carnation is very much like a full stop. It's your eye assumes the design is finished, but by adding this elongated material at the back, it extends your eye out of the design and makes it a little bit more pleasing to the design, to the eye. And I'm going to bring a little bit of foliage then towards the back as well, so that we echo this profile at the front. Short little bits at the base and coming taller, so we have a very pleasing shape to the eye. And again, last week we talked a little bit about balance. So not only do we need visual balance and our eye to travel through to the back to give us some depth, but we also need actual balance to stop the design from falling over. Now when we're on a flat base like this and the design isn't too large, we don't tend to have that difficulty. But if it was a tall pedestal, then we need to be very careful and bring some weight to the design. And by extending that colour back, it gives us some depth and makes the design look three-dimensional and creates a much more pleasing and a much more attractive shape. And the Weigela I'm using to come down through the centre of the design so that we have it at the top and we have it brought through to the front as well. And I'm going to use it out onto my longer side first of all. So I've measured that so it sits quite nicely underneath my carnation. So we're following that lovely coppery sort of bronze and green colour through to the edge, and we're also going to return it back on this side as well. So I made sure I had enough material in the same sort of colour and texture to come through to the opposite side. Now that one is a little bit spoiling my line, so I'm popping on the other side. And you can hopefully see that lovely L shape forming a bit stronger and a bit more effectively over from one side to the other. Now any small little bits of foliage we can tuck in to help cover that plastic tray and to help cover our floral foam. Remember, I said that it's important that we cover as much of the foam as we possibly can. It stops it dehydrating. Once it's dehydrated and it's lost all its water, then the flowers obviously won't have anything to drink from. And I think another little bit of foliage over here just to hide that carnation stem a little bit. Now the Weigela that we've just used is a deciduous leaf, so this will start dropping over the next couple of weeks. Great one to use in the summer. Very handy little plant to have in the garden. Now to strengthen my focal area, which is here where we have this collection of carnations, I'm going to bring in the rounder, flatter, more base leaves. These don't tend to work very well at long lengths because it has, again, a very bold shape and it's very dominant to the eye. So these are much better used short and down there towards the centre. A great one to have in the garden if you're a clean flower arranger or you're just starting out on your floral journey. There are Heucheras in just a vast selection of colours. They come in greens and peaches and pinks, these gorgeous sort of autumn tones as well, and it's a real good one to have in the garden. In the summer months they have tall little bell-like flowers on them which are very pretty and very attractive to use in floral designs. So you can see now those larger leaves help to strengthen this focal area, contrasts against the very small leafed foliage that we use to create the outline shape. I'm just also going to add in these little Bergenia leaves. Again, another one that's great to have in the garden, and these can grow enormous as well. Fabulous one to have. I'm going to just bring those through to the centre as well. Helps to strengthen that placement, that visual section in the middle. How are we doing? I think that's really coming together quite well there. Let's get rid of this little bit of rubbish. And we're going to now place in the berries. Now the little Rosehips, these are obviously quite short, so we don't get a great deal of stem length on these, but we'll go as tall as we can, just in towards the focal point in the centre. And I'm going to continue that colour through the centre. So you can see at the moment I've just brought it down almost through the centre line, and then we'll bring some out to the longer section on my right hand side so that the colour is brought all the way through. Now this is quite a nice small little bit, so that will suit my shorter side quite nicely. Now as your design develops, don't be worried about moving anything that you have, because as you add to it and more material gets placed into the foam, you might find that something doesn't quite look right where you originally put it. So I just slightly moved one of the leaves over to the one side, and I think we're going to use this last piece. We have quite a nice long piece right out to the edge to accompany that carnation on the end. So what the berry is doing is it's continuing the line over to the one side, so it's accentuating that L shape that we're trying to create, and hopefully you can see that we've got an unbalanced design, visually unbalanced, so we've got one side longer than the other. Now I did have also the rosemary to add in, and I think my height needs to be a little bit strengthened, so we'll use a little bit of the rosemary up there towards the height. And you probably remember from last week I explained to you about not finishing all your flower material at the same height, because you get a very solid, very hard finish to your design. If you finish with your material staggered, it's a lot more pleasing to the eye. And again, we've got that rosemary to the top, so I'll bring that out to the side as well, so that we have a nice link between our colour and texture of the rosemary. And then what we'll do with this larger piece is we'll cut it into smaller sections so that we're helping to bring some visual link between one side and the other, and we're helping to bring some texture and that colour down to the base of the design as well. Just clear off that board. So that little one there is just going to come a bit closer into the middle, and I think that's quite a nice design. How do we feel about that one? Is that something you think you can achieve at home? So to create that unbalanced look, you gauge your height, and then when you've decided on what your height is going to be, your side, your longer side, for me looks nicer when it's half the distance, but you can go the full length. So you have your height and your side is the same. When you've gauged your side, half that to make your shorter side, and then you have that asymmetric triangle shape forming. So something a little bit different from last week, but a really good progression on from that line. So I hope you've enjoyed that one. Now don't forget, every Monday, 9:30 in the morning, we launch a new video and something different. So next week it's going to be a symmetrical design, so we're going to be doing the sort of balanced version of what we've done here today. So you'll have a third design in the Back to Basics series. Then once we've completed the Back to Basics designs, we'll take them on to the next level by adding some more flowers and more colours and more textures in as you get a little bit more competent with your arranging. So hopefully we'll see you next Monday.